So you want to get your feet wet with programming in Rust. You're using Debian as your operating system. We need to open up a terminal window, and it doesn't matter what terminal we use. We can use terminal, we can use console, you can use QTerminal. Let's see what other terminal. You can use Terminator. I'll just use QTerminal this time around. With your sudo capabilities, you need to apt install rustc. Yes, continue. And Rust is now installed. We need a place to keep our projects. The term programs and projects is somewhat synonymous. It's not exactly synonymous, but I'm going to refer to our programs, our Rust programs, as projects a lot of times. We need a place to store them. We're going to create a directory called projects. And in that directory, we're going to create a directory for our Rust projects. Oops, make directory Rust. And in that directory, we want to create our first project. Let's make a directory called example1. See if I can spell example1. And in that directory, we can just put a new file here, or we can create a source directory file. Let's do that just because it'll make more sense in a minute. Change into our, nano source. No, let's not do that. Let's remove directory source for now, just to keep things simple. So we have nothing in our project directory. Let's create a file called main.rs. All Rust programs start in main, so this is the file name we want to use. And a simple little program, well, all programs, like I say, start in main. There has to be a function, fn, called main, and this is the body of the function called main. I'm going to put a comment here saying this is the end of the function called main, and in between these two curly braces, that's too many spaces, we're going to say print line bang, open parentheses, open quote, hello world, and then close that line. Now if we save this, Control S for save, and then exit, Control X for exit, we see that we now have a file called main. And if we cat it, or if we less it or cat it, we see that's the text we just typed. To compile this, right now the program is in English human language. It needs to be converted over to computer language. We do that by compiling it. We do that using the Rust compiler, which is rustc. We give the rustc compiler the name of the file we're compiling, and it did it. Now if we look at this directory, we will see that there are two files, our original English language program and our computer language program called main. When I cat this out, it's probably going to throw a bunch of garbage on the screen. Yep. And just make sure that everything's okay, I'm going to reset my terminal window. Okay, so we've got two programs here. Now this main is executable. You can see that by the X's over in the left-hand columns right here, which means that main is an executable program. We're going to execute it by saying start in the current directory and run main. And there is our hello world program. You can use other options on the Rust command, on the Rust compile line. Let's say we're going to compile this program again. This time we want to call it something different. We're going to change the output name to x1. And now we'll have three files. Our original main.rs, which has the English programming, our original main program, which we compiled into machine code, and our new ex1 program, which we compiled into machine code. ex1 and main are identical because the compiler created the same thing. It's just that it changed the output name to ex1 for one of them. Now if we try running that, sure enough it ran. Let's go back into main.rs, And instead of hopping in and out and in and out, I'm going to use a feature of this terminal window to split. So that I've got two terminals in one window. And this way I can make changes over in the left-hand side and then switch over to the right-hand side and compile it here. Oops, what happened? Oh, I'm not in the right directory. Duh. Change directory projects, rust, example 1. Now I'm in the right place. Rust C main.rs. And now if we run main, we should get hi world instead of hello world. Why didn't that work? Projects rust example 1. Did I not save? Oh, I didn't save this. See this little asterisk up here? That means I didn't save the file. So let me do a quick save. Control S. Come over here, recompile it, rerun it. There's the hi world. So you can see that by splitting the window here, we've got kind of an integrated development environment where we have the code on one side and the commands, the running on the other side. But normally we would not create a Rust program and use the Rust compiler instructions because the compiler instructions can get pretty complicated, and Rust has an entire subsystem called cargo which handles a lot of this housekeeping stuff. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to exit out of this code program. I'm going to back up one level in the directory structure on both windows. And then in one other window, it doesn't matter which one, I'm going to remove that directory structure. Now it's gone over here too. And instead of doing manually creating that main.rs, we're going to use the cargo command, new, and we'll give the name of the project that we're doing. We'll call it again example 1. And it created the example 1 directory for us, just as it did earlier, but within that directory are more files than what we had originally. You don't need to worry about most of what these are. This cargo toml is a config file. Don't worry about that right now. Source is the one you're most interested in, so let's look and see what's in there. And lo and behold, there's a main RS. This is not the main RS we created a minute ago. We deleted that, remember? But it is an exact copy of what we created a minute ago. Well, it's almost an exact copy. The program itself is an exact copy, but I believe on my original I had the closing comment here, which is something I like to do. I don't know of any other programmers that do this, but I like to see my start and stop of my functions. But now it's the same program, and now instead of compiling it, instead of doing rustc and giving it the name, what we do is, I need to change into that directory, cargo run, and that compiles it and runs it. If you just want to compile it without running it, you can do a cargo build. But most of the time you're going to want to run it. And if you don't like that extra garbage, well, I don't want to say garbage, but extra text on there, you can say do it in quiet mode, and you just get the output of the program without all that extra information. This program that we've just created is not in our working directory here, but you see there is now a new directory called target. Remember, our main program is in source. If we look in source, there's our main program, which is this here, main.rs. And in the target directory are a few things. Most notably is the debug directory, where it's several things. And then we have the example program here. And notice it's called example 1 instead of main. Remember when we originally compiled things, main.rs, using the rustc compiler, it compiled it to the name main. Because we're using cargo run, and we have told it that the name of the project is example1, it creates the executable as named example1 instead of as named main. And you can run that manually. Let's see, target debug example1, and there's the name of our, there's the output of our program. We can come over here and change this to high again, save it. Notice we've got the asterisk up here saying it's not saved, so I'm going to hit Control S to save. Come back over here and cargo run it again, and now we've got a high world, and again it put it into the target debug directory and named it as example1. The integrated development environment that we've kind of hocked together here is useful, but it might be better if we had something that was more of a real integrated development environment. So I'm going to exit out of the right hand side. I'm going to exit out of this program and exit out of this. Actually, I'm not going to exit yet out of the terminal window. We're going to use an integrated development environment called Geany. We'll have to install it. Sudo apt install Geany. And now I can exit out of this terminal window. And now we should have Geany in our menu items. It should be under Programming, Geany, or you can just search for it. Now I'm using, I think, Cinnamon here for my desktop environment. You may have KDE or GNOME or Mate or whatever, so your menus and such forth will look different than mine, a good chance of it. But now we're in Geany, and we can go open that file, which is under Home, Projects, Rust, example1, source, main. Let's just try running this under, the reason that it has all these cargo things here, cargo run, cargo build, cargo test, so forth, is because Geany knows that any file ending in RS is a Rust program. If we were doing a Python program or Java or C++, these menu items would be different. They would be tailored for that programming language instead of this programming language. So let's try doing a cargo run and see what happens. I guess we need to be on the output here. Status, I guess. Try this again. Cargo run. And it does not work for some reason. Why not? Well, let's go look at the build commands. These build commands set what these commands do. So build commands. Cargo run should be running cargo run. I know what's wrong. What it's doing is under preferences, tools, it is trying to run this terminal emulator. And whatever X terminal emulator is pointing to, and I'm not sure what it's pointing to, is not configured properly to work with Geany. So I'm just going to replace X terminal window with one I know will work, console. Now if we try it, sure enough, it opens up a console window and it runs our program. I'm going to press return to close this console window and return back to the IDE. Now if you don't want to mess with those preferences and then the terminal window, a nice thing about this is you can do things like set the geometry to, I don't know, something weird like 200 by 300 pixels. That'll be a pretty small window. But now that when we run it, we get a very small 200 by 300 window. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go back in here and get rid of those geometry things. And now it'll remember the last size that it used, which the first time we run it will be 200 by 300. So let's expand that out to something more reasonable. Close it, run it again, and it'll remember that last size. There we go. Or if you don't want to mess with that external window, you can run things down here in this area. The way you do that is go back into Preferences, and instead of going into Tools, go into Terminal and click on the Execute Programs in the Virtual Terminal environment. Click. Now when you run it, why is that not running? That should be running. Project cargo run. Oh, file not executed because the terminal may contain blah blah blah. What? Let me go look at the preferences again. I've got something messed up. Execute programs in the BTE. We're not using this, so this shouldn't matter. Oh, I've seen this before. I know what the problem is. Let's go back into set build commands. Let's use the run command, and instead of using what's defaulted here, change this to cargo run. Even though it's the same thing as the cargo run, don't worry too much about it, just do it. Now let's try a run. I'm going to click down here and hit enter, see if that does anything. Oh, there we go, that did it. Okay, I actually had to come down here and click into this terminal window and hit enter, just like this message down here says. Press Control-C or enter to declare. I don't know why it's a little flaky maybe on that regard. But anyhow, now when you run this, you can see it runs the program just as you expect. Now it's kind of a pain to come up here with your mouse all the time and hit cargo run or run. So you could hit this gear here, which does the same thing, or hit the F5 key, which does the same thing. So I'm just going to hit the F5 key, and there's the program run. So those are the two things you need to be concerned about. Three things, I guess. You've got to get this right if you're going to use the external window, the external terminal window. You've got to get this right depending on whether you want to use the external or the built-in VTE. And you've got to get these things right. And we probably could set that back to what it was. I don't remember what it was. I'm not going to worry about it. And just use the cargo run button, which corresponds to this cargo run button here. But so I can hit the F5 key, I have set the run button to cargo run, which is this button. So I can either come up here and click on run, or I can hit F5, or I can hit this little gear here, which is the same thing as the F5 or the run. And that's the basics of running a Rust program in Geany on Debian. Now there's a lot more to be done with main, and I will probably create another video after this one which gets a little more deeper into some of that stuff. Thank you. Have a good day. Before I close this video, I did want to point out one more thing. Let me go back and open the terminal window. Change into my projects directory, Rust, example 1. No, let's go back up. Make directory example 2. When we created main.rs earlier, I said that all Rust programs look to the main function to be the main entry point of a program. The file itself does not have to be called main.rs. We could call it bub.rs and put in here our function main. See if I can type all right. And our program, print line bang, bub was here. Exit out and save that, and we can compile it, bub, and now we have a bub executable. So the file itself of the project, the main opening file of the project, does not have to be called main.rs. but that's typical for what you would call it. But the main function itself does have to be called main. Thank you.